Arizona Cardinals, founded 1898. The Cardinals aren't just the oldest NFL franchise, they predate the NFL itself by over 2 decades. The team was originally founded in 1898 in Chicago by a group of neighborhood athletes who played on a sandlot field. Back then, they were called the Morgan Athletic Club, and there was no league, just local competition and loose scheduling. The team changed names shortly after to the Racine Normals, based on the street they played on, Racine Avenue in Chicago. In 1901, they got their first real uniforms, a set of used faded maroon jerseys from the University of Chicago. When team owner Chris O'Brien saw them, he declared the color wasn't maroon, it was cardinal red. The name stuck. They became the Racine Cardinals, and kept that name when they joined the NFL in 1920 as one of its charter members. They won NFL titles in 1925 and 1947, but struggled with attendance and money in a crowded Chicago market, where the Chicago Bears dominated the spotlight. So in 1960, the Cardinals moved to St. Louis, where they were known as the St. Louis Cardinals, sharing the name with the city's baseball team. They stayed in St. Louis for nearly 3 decades, but never found long-term success. In 1988, the team relocated again, this time to Phoenix, Arizona, and eventually rebranded in 1994 as the Arizona Cardinals to represent the entire state. Chicago Bears, founded 1919. The Chicago Bears trace their roots back to 1919, when they were founded by the A.E. Staley Company, a starch manufacturer in Decatur, Illinois. The team was originally known as the Decatur Staleys, and they were created as a company-sponsored squad, part athletic club, part public relations tool. But this wasn't a beer league operation. They paid their players and took football seriously from day one. In 1920, the Staleys joined the newly formed American Professional Football Association, the league that would become the NFL in 1922. The team was managed and coached by a 25-year-old named George Halas, a former University of Illinois standout and Navy veteran. He quickly became the face of the franchise, and later the league itself. In 1921, Halas convinced the Staley Company to let him move the team to Chicago. As part of the deal, he kept the name Staley's for 1 more year, and then rebranded in 1922 as the Chicago Bears. The name was a nod to the city's baseball team, the Cubs. Halas figured if the Cubs played baseball, the bigger, rougher Bears should play football. From there, the Bears became a cornerstone of the NFL. They won their first league title in 1921, then added 8 more championships before the Super Bowl era. They were known for hard-nosed, ground-and-pound football, exemplified by the legendary Bronco Nagurski, and later by the revolutionary T-formation offense, which Halas helped pioneer in the 1940s. Under Halas, the Bears became a dynasty and helped stabilize the NFL during its early, volatile years. Halas coached the team for 40 seasons, won 324 games, and left behind a legacy that still shapes the league. Green Bay Packers, founded 1919. The team was founded in 1919 by Curly Lambeau and George Calhoun, 2 former high school teammates who wanted to start a semi-pro team in their hometown of Green Bay, Wisconsin. Lambeau worked for the Indian Packing Company, which agreed to fund the team with $500 for uniforms and equipment. In exchange, the team would be named after the company. That's how the name Packers was born. In 1921, the Packers joined the NFL. They were almost immediately kicked out for using college players illegally, but were reinstated the same year, marking the true beginning of what would become the 3rd oldest franchise in the league. The Packers faced unique challenges. Green Bay was, and still is, the smallest market in major professional sports. Most early NFL teams were folding or relocating to larger cities, but the Packers survived thanks to something no other team had: community ownership. In 1923, the team was reorganized as a nonprofit, publicly owned corporation, funded by local fans and businesses. That model still exists today, with over 500,000 shareholders who collectively own the team. It's the only structure of its kind in American sports. Under Curly Lambeau, the Packers became a powerhouse in the 1920s and 30s, winning 6 NFL championships. In the 1960s, under legendary coach Vince Lombardi, they added 5 more, including victories in the first 2 Super Bowls. Their home stadium, Lambeau Field, opened in 1957 and is now considered hallowed ground. a symbol of tradition, loyalty, and frigid playoff games. New York Giants, founded 1925. In the early 1920s, professional football was still considered second class compared to the college game. Most NFL teams were based in small towns like Canton or Rock Island. The league knew that to grow, it needed a presence in the country's biggest city, New York. So in 1925, the NFL awarded a franchise to Tim Mara, a bookmaker and businessman who had never even seen a football game. The price? Just $500. Roughly $8,000 in today's money. He named the team the New York Giants, borrowing the name from the city's already established baseball team, a common move back then. But unlike many startup franchises that folded quickly, Mara's Giants gave the NFL credibility. They were the league's first big market team, and their success helped professional football shed its backwater image. The team played its first season at the Polo Grounds in Manhattan and quickly built a following. By 1927, they won their first NFL championship, and in the 1930s and 40s, they became a consistent powerhouse, appearing in 8 championship games before the Super Bowl era. Owned by the Mara family for 4 generations, the Giants are one of only a few franchises that have remained in the same city with the same name since their founding. Detroit Lions, founded 1930. The Detroit Lions weren't always Detroit's team. They were born as a small-town franchise in Portsmouth, Ohio. In 1930, a group of businessmen founded the Portsmouth Spartans, a scrappy team in a working-class river town with a population under 50,000. Despite their size, the Spartans held their own against bigger city franchises, even finishing second in the league in 1932. That 1932 season ended in a moment that changed NFL history. The Spartans faced the Bears in a postseason showdown at Chicago Stadium, indoors, on an 80-yard field, with dirt and hash marks drawn in chalk. It was the first NFL playoff game, and it led the league to adopt divisional play and a formal championship game starting the following season. But the Great Depression hit small-town teams hard. Portsmouth couldn't financially sustain a pro team, and in 1934, the franchise was bought by Detroit radio executive George A. Richards and moved to Detroit. They were renamed the Lions to align with the Detroit Tigers baseball team, and because, as Richards put it, a lion is the king of the jungle, and we hope to be the kings of the NFL. The move paid off quickly. In their first season in Detroit, the Lions went 10-3 and became a marquee team. They also established one of the NFL's most enduring traditions, the Thanksgiving Day game, which started in 1934 as a promotional idea by Richards, and still continues today. Washington Commanders, founded 1932. In 1932, the NFL granted a franchise to George Preston Marshall, a successful laundry businessman in Boston. He named the team the Boston Braves, and they shared a stadium and a name with the city's baseball team. But in 1933, the football team moved to Fenway Park, home of the Red Sox. To avoid confusion and carve out its own identity, Marshall renamed the team the Boston Redskins. He kept the Native American branding and hired Lone Star Dietz, who claimed Native ancestry, as head coach, a controversial decision that would spark debate for decades. Despite some early success, including the 1936 NFL championship game, Boston fans didn't embrace the team. Poor attendance and a strained relationship with the city pushed Marshall to move the franchise in 1937 to Washington, D.C., where it immediately found a fan base and a fresh start. The team's first season in Washington was a dream. Rookie quarterback Sammy Baugh led them to an NFL championship in 1937 and another in 1942. Over the next few decades, Washington became one of the NFL's most popular teams, especially during the televised boom of the 1970s and 80s. Under head coach Joe Gibbs, they won 3 Super Bowls, solidifying their reputation as a powerhouse franchise. However, the team's original name and imagery became increasingly controversial. After decades of protest, mounting public pressure, and sponsor backlash, the organization officially retired the Redskins name in 2020. They played 2 seasons as the Washington football team, and in 2022, rebranded as the Washington Commanders. By the way, I'm going to be posting a lot here, so it would mean a lot if you subscribed and dropped a like for the algorithm. Pittsburgh Steelers, founded 1933. The Pittsburgh Steelers were born in 1933, but not under that name. That year, Pennsylvania finally legalized professional football, allowing the NFL to expand into the state. Art Rooney, a local boxing promoter and businessman, paid $2,500 for a franchise and named the team the Pittsburgh Pirates, after the city's popular baseball team. But success didn't come quickly. For the first 7 years, the Pirates were one of the worst teams in the league, cycling through coaches, struggling to find talent, and finishing with a losing record every season. The turning point came in 1940, when Rooney renamed the team the Steelers, a nod to Pittsburgh's identity as the steel capital of the world. World War II caused player shortages, so the Steelers were forced to merge with other teams just to field a roster. In 1943, they became the Steagles after temporarily joining with the Eagles. In 1944, they merged again, this time with the Chicago Cardinals, forming a short-lived and historically terrible team known unofficially as Card Pit. The post-war years were rocky, but the Steelers slowly began to find their footing. Still, it wasn't until the 1970s that the franchise transformed into a powerhouse. Under head coach Chuck Noll, Pittsburgh built a dynasty. They drafted legends like Terry Bradshaw, Joe Green, Franco Harris, Mel Blount, Jack Lambert, and Lynn Swann, and won 4 Super Bowls in 6 years. Philadelphia Eagles, founded 1933. In 1931, the NFL's Frankfurt Yellow Jackets, a team based in Northeast Philadelphia, folded due to financial struggles and a stadium fire. 2 years later, in 1933, the NFL wanted to reestablish a presence in the city, so it awarded a new franchise to Pennsylvania businessmen Bert Bell and Lud Ray for $2,500. That team became the Philadelphia Eagles, named after the Blue Eagle, a symbol of the National Recovery Administration, a New Deal program launched during the Great Depression. The name was a nod to American resilience and rebirth. Like many early NFL franchises, the Eagles got off to a rough start. They didn't record a winning season until 1943, and during World War II, they were temporarily merged with the Pittsburgh Steelers to form the Steagles due to league-wide player shortages. The real breakthrough came in the late 1940s. With head coach Greasy Neal and Hall of Fame running back Steve Van Buren, the Eagles won back-to-back NFL championships in 1948 and 1949, including a 1948 title game played in a blizzard. The only score came from a Van Buren touchdown. The Eagles became known for their gritty style, loyal fan base, and defensive identity, traits that still define the franchise today. They moved into Franklin Field, then Veterans Stadium, and later Lincoln Financial Field. But the passion in the stands never changed. It took nearly 60 more years to win another title, but in 2017, the Eagles captured their first Super Bowl, completing a story that started nearly a century earlier with a symbol of hope during America's hardest times. Cleveland Browns, founded 1946. In 1944, Cleveland businessman Arthur Mickey McBride secured the rights to a new pro football team in the upstart All-America Football Conference, AAFC, a league created to rival the NFL. To build his franchise, McBride hired a young, no-nonsense coach from Ohio State, Paul Brown, and that decision changed football history. Brown brought a revolutionary approach to the game. He introduced things we now take for granted: film study, playbooks, scouting departments, and full-time coaching staffs. He ran the Browns like a machine, and in their very first season in 1946, they went 12-2 and won the AAFC championship. They didn't stop there. The Browns won 4 straight AAFC titles, with stars like Otto Graham and Marion Motley. They were so dominant that when the AAFC folded in 1949, the NFL had no choice but to absorb them, even though many owners feared they were too good. The Browns joined the NFL in 1950 and immediately proved the doubters wrong by winning the NFL championship in their very first season, beating the Rams in a thriller. Throughout the 1950s and early 60s, the Browns remained one of the league's top teams. Paul Brown eventually clashed with ownership and was fired in 1963, but his blueprint stayed in place. In 1964, with Jim Brown at running back, one of the greatest players of all time, Cleveland won another NFL championship, still their last title to this day. The team moved to the new AFC after the 1970 NFL-AFL merger, But the most dramatic moment in franchise history came in 1995, when owner Art Modell controversially moved the team to Baltimore. The NFL suspended operations for the Browns, but promised the city the name, colors, and history would remain. In 1999, the Browns were officially reactivated as an expansion franchise, picking up where they left off, with one of the most loyal, passionate fan bases in the league, San Francisco 49ers, founded 1946. The San Francisco 49ers were the first major professional sports franchise based on the West Coast, and their story begins in the post-World War II boom of 1946. Founded by lumber magnate Tony Morabito, the team was created to bring pro football to a region that had been largely ignored by the major leagues. Morabito had long believed that the NFL needed a West Coast presence. After being rejected multiple times by the NFL, he turned to the newly formed All-America Football Conference, the same league that launched the Cleveland Browns. He was granted a franchise and named the team the 49ers, a tribute to the fortune seekers of the 1849 California Gold Rush, a symbol of risk-taking and adventure that fit perfectly with San Francisco's identity. The team played its first games at Kezar Stadium in Golden Gate Park, and while they were often overshadowed by Paul Brown's powerhouse Browns, the 49ers were competitive and popular right out of the gate. In 1949, when the AAFC merged with the NFL, the 49ers were one of only 3 teams to survive the merger, but early NFL success was slow. For decades, the 49ers were competitive, but never champions. That all changed in the 1980s. The hiring of Bill Walsh in 1979 brought in a new philosophy, the West Coast offense, a short-passing, timing-based system that revolutionized football. With quarterback Joe Montana and later Steve Young, wide receiver Jerry Rice, and a defense anchored by Ronnie Lott, the 49ers became a dynasty. Between 1981 and 1994, they won 5 Super Bowls, cementing themselves as one of the greatest franchises in NFL history. Los Angeles Rams, founded 1936. The Rams' story begins not in California, but in the industrial Midwest. They were founded in 1936 as the Cleveland Rams, joining the NFL as part of the league's slow expansion during the Great Depression. After a few rocky seasons, the franchise found success, winning the NFL championship in 1945, led by quarterback Bob Waterfield. But then, something almost unheard of happened. Just 1 month after winning the title, the team left Cleveland. Owner Dan Reeves saw bigger opportunities out west, with the country emerging from World War II and the population booming in California. He decided to move the team to Los Angeles, making the Rams the first NFL franchise to play on the West Coast. Their new home was the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum, a massive 90,000-seat stadium that gave the Rams instant visibility. But there was one condition. The Coliseum Commission required the team to be racially integrated if they were to play there. So in 1946, the Rams signed Kenny Washington and Woody Strode, 2 former UCLA stars, making them the first black players in the modern NFL era, a full year before Jackie Robinson broke baseball's color barrier. That move helped reshape the league's future. Through the 1950s and 60s, the Rams developed a reputation for innovation and star power, with players like Norm Van Brocklin and later the fearsome defensive line known as the Fearsome Foursome. They moved to Anaheim in 1980, but stayed rooted in the Southern California identity. In 1995, the team relocated again, this time to St. Louis, where they'd win Super Bowl 34 with the greatest show on turf, led by Kurt Warner, Marshall Faulk, and Isaac Bruce. But in 2016, the Rams returned to Los Angeles, becoming the centerpiece of the NFL's new Hollywood vision. In 2021, they christened SoFi Stadium with a Super Bowl win, their first in LA, and fully re-established themselves as a West Coast powerhouse. Indianapolis Colts, founded 1953. The origins of the Colts franchise are a bit tangled, involving failed teams, a last-minute revival, and one of the most infamous relocations in NFL history. It starts with Baltimore, a city that had briefly hosted a team called the Colts in the early 1950s. That version of the franchise folded in 1951, but just 2 years later in 1953, NFL owners approved a new team for Baltimore, using the same Colts name, colors, and fan identity. It wasn't technically the same franchise on paper, but for fans, the reborn Colts were a continuation of their team. Under ownership from Carroll Rosenblum, the Baltimore Colts became one of the league's most respected franchises. They drafted quarterback Johnny Unitas in 1956, and that changed everything. Unitas wasn't just good, he was a revolution. With his poise, arm strength, and leadership, he helped usher in the modern passing game. The Colts' 1958 NFL championship win over the Giants, a dramatic overtime thriller, became known as the greatest game ever played. It helped launch pro football into the national consciousness and made the Colts a household name. The team won NFL titles in 1958, 1959, and 1968, and finally captured Super Bowl V in 1970. But behind the scenes, the team was struggling with financial issues and stadium concerns. After years of disputes with the city of Baltimore, owner Robert Irsay made a controversial decision in 1984. He moved the Colts to Indianapolis and did it literally overnight, using Mayflower moving trucks under the cover of darkness. It became one of the most dramatic and bitter relocations in sports history. Despite the rocky start in Indiana, the Colts rebuilt, slowly. In 2006, they won Super Bowl 41, and even after Manning left, the team struck gold again with Andrew Luck. Buffalo Bills, founded 1960. Buffalo had a brief NFL history in the 1920s, but by mid-century it was without a team. That changed when Ralph Wilson, a Detroit-based businessman and one of the AFL's founding owners, brought pro football back to Western New York. He named the team the Buffalo Bills, inspired by a previous Buffalo franchise and the famous Wild West showman, Buffalo Bill Cody. Wilson's franchise quickly built a blue-collar identity, matching the spirit of the city it represented. The team's original stadium was War Memorial Stadium, affectionately called the Rock Pile, and it created one of the most passionate fan bases in football, the start of what would become Bills Mafia. The Bills found early success in the AFL. Led by legendary coach Lou Saban and quarterback Jack Kemp, they won back-to-back AFL championships in 1964 and 1965. But the real golden era came in the late 1980s and early 90s. Under head coach Marv Levy and general manager Bill Polian, the Bills built a juggernaut. With stars like Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas, Andre Reed, and Bruce Smith, Buffalo made an unprecedented 4 straight Super Bowl appearances, from 1990 to 1993. No team in NFL history has ever matched that streak, but heartbreak followed each time, with the Bills losing all 4 Super Bowls. With Josh Allen at quarterback and a re-energized defense, the Bills are once again a Super Bowl contender, and Buffalo is alive with belief again. Denver Broncos, founded 1960. Denver was not considered a prime football market at the time. The Broncos had one of the league's smallest stadiums, the least funding, and, perhaps worst of all, some of the worst uniforms in football history, famously featuring mustard yellow jerseys with vertically striped socks. But despite the rocky start, the team's presence in the mile-high city helped turn Denver into a football town. The fans were loyal, even as the team struggled through 10 straight losing seasons after its founding. Things began to shift in the 1970s. The team moved into Mile High Stadium, and the arrival of head coach Red Miller and the legendary Orange Crush defense gave Denver its first identity as a contender. In 1977, the Broncos reached Super Bowl XII, their first appearance. Even though they lost to the Cowboys, the stage was set. But the defining era of Broncos football began in 1983, when they pulled off one of the biggest draft trades in history. Quarterback John Elway, who had refused to play for the Baltimore Colts, was acquired by Denver in a franchise-changing move. Elway would become the face of the team for nearly 2 decades, leading the Broncos to 5 Super Bowl appearances and 3 AFC titles throughout his career. After Elway's retirement, the team went through a transitional period until another star quarterback arrived, Peyton Manning. In 2012, Denver signed the future Hall of Famer, and within a few years, the Broncos were once again at the top of the league. Kansas City Chiefs, founded 1960 as Dallas Texans. The franchise we know today as the Kansas City Chiefs actually began as the Dallas Texans, one of the original 8 teams in the American Football League in 1960. The team was founded by Lamar Hunt, the son of a Texas oil tycoon who had been repeatedly denied an NFL franchise. So he created his own league, the AFL, and put a team in Dallas to compete directly with the NFL's new expansion team, the Cowboys. That rivalry couldn't last. Despite early success, including an AFL championship in 1962, the Texans struggled for fan attention in Dallas. So Hunt made a bold decision. He moved the team to Kansas City in 1963 and rebranded them as the Chiefs, a name chosen to honor the nickname of Kansas City Mayor Harold Roe Bartle, who had been instrumental in bringing the team to town. It didn't take long for the Chiefs to become one of the AFL's most successful teams. Under head coach Hank Stram, and with stars like Len Dawson, Bobby Bell, and Willie Lanier, the Chiefs won 3 AFL championships, including a win in the final AFL-NFL championship game before the merger, Super Bowl IV in 1970, where they upset the heavily favored Minnesota Vikings. That win helped legitimize the AFL as equal to the NFL and solidified Kansas City's place in football history. After that early peak, the Chiefs went into a decades-long drought with few playoff appearances and no Super Bowl trips. But they remained beloved in Kansas City, with one of the loudest and most loyal fan bases in the NFL at Arrowhead Stadium, which opened in 1972 and has become legendary for its deafening noise. Everything changed in the late 2010s, when head coach Andy Reid and general manager Brett Veach built a new powerhouse, centered around quarterback Patrick Mahomes, the 10th overall pick in the 2017 draft. With Mahomes, the Chiefs transformed into an offensive juggernaut. Dallas Cowboys, founded 1960. In the late 1950s, pro football had exploded in popularity across the U.S., but Texas, the heartland of high school and college football, had no NFL franchise. Oilman Clint Murchison Jr. saw an opportunity. He secured the rights to a team in 1960, but there was a catch. The NFL was hesitant to expand into Dallas because the rival AFL had already awarded a franchise there. So Murchison played a brilliant hand. He purchased the rights to the Washington Redskins fight song, Hail to the Redskins, from the composer, who had a grudge against Washington's owner. Then, Murchison used it as leverage. Either approve the Cowboys as a franchise or lose your fight song. It worked. The NFL granted Dallas its first ever team, and the Cowboys were born. From the start, the team had a modern vision. They hired Tom Landry, a former Giants defensive coordinator, known for his stoic presence and innovation. Landry created the flex defense, brought in advanced scouting, and helped establish Dallas as a forward-thinking operation, even if their early years were brutal. The Cowboys went winless in their debut season, but by the late 1960s, they became a juggernaut. They reached 5 Super Bowls in the 1970s, winning 2, and cemented themselves as the most glamorous franchise in the league. By the 1990s, under the flamboyant ownership of Jerry Jones, the Cowboys entered their second dynasty. Behind Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin, and head coach Jimmy Johnson, Dallas won 3 Super Bowls in 4 years, dominating the decade. Nicknamed America's Team due to their nationwide following and iconic star logo, the Cowboys became more than just a football franchise. They were a brand, a symbol of winning, and a cultural touchstone. Las Vegas Raiders, founded 1960. They were originally founded in 1960 as the Oakland Raiders, joining the AFL as a late addition after the Minnesota Vikings backed out to join the NFL. With little time to prepare, Oakland scrambled to build a roster and a brand, and the early years were rough. But that all changed when Al Davis arrived. In 1963, Davis became the team's head coach, and eventually the controlling owner. He brought swagger, defiance, and a win-at-all-costs mentality. Under his leadership, the Raiders adopted the iconic silver and black colors and a rebellious identity. Just win, baby. Throughout the late 60s and 70s, the Raiders became one of the most feared teams in football, led by legends like Ken Stabler, Fred Biletnikoff, Gene Upshaw, Art Shell, and John Madden as head coach. The Raiders won their first Super Bowl in 1976. But the Raiders were never stationary for long. In 1982, frustrated with stadium issues in Oakland, Davis moved the team to Los Angeles, becoming the LA Raiders. There, they reached new heights. winning Super Bowl XVIII in 1983 with a dominant performance against Washington. By 1995, the team moved back to Oakland, but the relationship between the franchise and the city never truly healed. The stadium situation remained poor, and despite some flashes of success, like their Super Bowl run in 2002, the Raiders struggled with consistency. Eventually, Al Davis's son, Mark Davis, inherited the team and sought a long-term solution. He found it in Las Vegas. In 2020, the franchise officially became the Las Vegas Raiders, moving into the state-of-the-art Allegiant Stadium just off the Vegas Strip. It marked the first NFL team in Nevada, and while it was a controversial move, it gave the Raiders a modern home, something they had long lacked. Los Angeles Chargers, founded 1960. The Los Angeles Chargers were one of the original 8 AFL franchises, founded in 1960 by hotel heir Baron Hilton, son of the Hilton Hotels empire. The team was based in Los Angeles for just one season before moving to San Diego in 1961, a decision driven by low attendance and the belief that a smaller market would offer a more passionate fan base. In San Diego, the Chargers quickly became one of the AFL's strongest franchises. Under head coach Sid Gilman, a visionary offensive mind, the team revolutionized the passing game. Gilman's offenses were vertical, fast-paced, and years ahead of their time, laying the groundwork for the modern NFL aerial attack. The Chargers made 5 AFL championship appearances in the 1960s and won their only league title in 1963, dominating the Boston Patriots 51-10. That remains the franchise's lone league championship. During their San Diego years, the team became known for electric players like Kellen Winslow and LaDainian Tomlinson. In the 2000s, San Diego saw a resurgence under head coach Marty Schottenheimer and later Norv Turner, with Tomlinson setting touchdown records and Phillip Rivers emerging as a durable, gunslinging quarterback. But despite deep playoff runs and talent across the roster, a Super Bowl appearance always remained just out of reach. Then came the controversial move. In 2017, after years of failed negotiations for a new stadium in San Diego, the Chargers relocated back to Los Angeles, becoming co-tenants with the Rams at SoFi Stadium in Inglewood. The move angered much of their original fan base, and the team has struggled to build a strong following. However, with young quarterback Justin Herbert leading the charge and one of the most talented rosters in football, the Chargers are once again positioned to compete. New England Patriots, founded 1960. The franchise that would become the New England Patriots started modestly in 1960 as the Boston Patriots, a founding member of the AFL. Their original home field, Nickerson Field, followed by a nomadic stretch playing games at venues like Fenway Park, Harvard Stadium, and Boston College. The team's original logo, Pat Patriot, a Revolutionary War soldier hiking a football, was voted on by fans and captured the local identity. But success on the field was hard to come by. The Patriots reached just one AFL championship game in the league's 10-year history and lost badly to the Chargers in 1963. By 1971, after years of subpar stadiums and inconsistent play, the franchise rebranded as the New England Patriots and moved to a new stadium in Foxborough, Massachusetts. It was an effort to expand the fan base beyond Boston and finally give the team a permanent home. For the next 2 decades, the Patriots were a middle-of-the-pack franchise. They reached Super Bowl XX in 1985 under head coach Raymond Berry, only to be steamrolled by the Chicago Bears' legendary defense. The 1990s brought even more inconsistency, until a series of events in the early 2000s would alter the course of NFL history. In 2000, the Patriots hired Bill Belichick as head coach, and in the 6th round of that same draft, they selected an unheralded quarterback out of Michigan, Tom Brady. 1 year later, Brady stepped in for injured starter Drew Bledsoe and never looked back. Under Belichick and Brady, the Patriots began a dynasty unmatched in modern football. From Tuck Rule games to Spygate, Deflategate, and the 28-3 comeback against the Falcons, the Patriots became the NFL's most talked about team, revered by some and hated by others. New York Jets, founded 1960. The team we now know as the New York Jets began its life in 1960 as the New York Titans, one of the 8 original members of the American Football League. At the time, they played in the old Polo Grounds, sharing the city with the far more established New York Giants, and trying desperately to find their footing. The Titans were underfunded, chaotic, and barely holding on financially. Players often practiced in public parks, and team operations were so unstable that players occasionally went unpaid. After just 3 seasons, the AFL stepped in and forced a sale of the team. That sale in 1963 changed everything. A new ownership group rebranded the team as the New York Jets, chose a green and white color scheme, and moved to Shea Stadium in Queens, right next to LaGuardia Airport. The name Jets was chosen to reflect the modern, high-flying image of the jet age and their new stadium's proximity to aviation. In 1965, the Jets made the boldest move in AFL history. They signed Joe Namath, a flashy, confident quarterback out of Alabama, to a then-record $427,000 contract. Namath became the face of the AFL and turned the Jets into must-watch TV. Then came the moment that put the AFL and the Jets into football lore. In 1969, Namath and the Jets upset the heavily favored Baltimore Colts in Super Bowl III. It was the AFL's first Super Bowl win, and Namath famously guaranteed victory days before the game. That win not only changed the Jets' legacy, but forced the NFL to respect the AFL as a legitimate league, paving the way for the AFL-NFL merger. But after that shining moment, success became fleeting. The Jets have struggled for most of their post-merger history, plagued by quarterback instability, front office turnover, and postseason droughts. They've had brief flashes, like the Mark Sanchez-led AFC Championship runs in 2009 and 2010, but have not returned to the Super Bowl since Namath's iconic win. Tennessee Titans, founded 1960. The Tennessee Titans story begins not in Nashville, but in Houston, Texas. They were one of the founding franchises of the American Football League in 1960, originally known as the Houston Oilers, and they were immediate winners. The Oilers won the very first 2 AFL championships in 1960 and 1961. They played their early home games in Yepesen Stadium, and their oil derrick logo quickly became one of the most recognizable in football. For much of their early existence, the Oilers were known for offensive firepower and passionate fans. In the late 70s and early 80s, the team developed a blue-collar identity under head coach Bum Phillips and running back Earl Campbell, who powered through defenders like a freight train. In the late 1980s and early 90s, the Oilers evolved into a high-flying team with quarterback Warren Moon, who helped popularize the run-and-shoot offense. They made the playoffs in 7 consecutive seasons, but never broke through to the Super Bowl. Their most infamous moment? The 1993 AFC wildcard game, where they blew a 32-point lead to the Bills, still the largest comeback in NFL history. Frustrated by stadium disputes and a lack of public support in Houston, owner Bud Adams decided to relocate the franchise to Tennessee. In 1997, the team played as the Tennessee Oilers, first in Memphis and then in Nashville. But the name never quite fit the new location. By 1999, the franchise was officially rebranded as the Tennessee Titans, a name chosen to evoke power, tradition, and regional pride. That same year, they moved into their new home, Adelphia Coliseum, now Nissan Stadium, and made a storybook run to Super Bowl 34. That Super Bowl ended in heartbreak. The Titans came up 1 yard short of forcing overtime in one of the most dramatic endings in NFL history. Since then, the Titans have remained competitive, with multiple playoff appearances, stars like Steve McNair, Eddie George, Chris Johnson, and Derrick Henry, and a tough, physical brand of football. Minnesota Vikings, founded 1961. The Minnesota Vikings weren't supposed to be an NFL team at all, at least not originally. In the late 1950s, a group of Minneapolis businessmen, led by Max Winter, secured rights to a franchise in the rival American Football League. But just before launching, they were approached by the NFL with a better offer: join the established league as an expansion franchise. The owners jumped at the chance, withdrew from the AFL, and in 1960 the Minnesota Vikings were officially born, set to begin play the following year. The name Vikings was chosen to reflect the region's strong Scandinavian heritage, a nod to Minnesota's large population of Nordic immigrants and its tough, rugged climate. From day one, the franchise leaned into that identity: cold weather, grit, and battle-tested football. The Vikings played their first season in 1961 and made an immediate splash by defeating the Chicago Bears in their debut game behind rookie quarterback Fran Tarkenton, who threw 4 touchdown passes. Though the team struggled early on, Tarkenton's arrival marked the beginning of a new era. In 1967, the Vikings hired Bud Grant, a no-nonsense coach who had dominated in the CFL. Under Grant, Minnesota became one of the most disciplined and physically imposing teams of the 1970s. The Purple People Eaters' defensive line, led by Alan Page, Carl Eller, Jim Marshall, and Gary Larson, became the backbone of a dominant era. From 1969 to 1976, the Vikings made 4 Super Bowl appearances, but heartbreak followed them. They lost each time, unable to capture the elusive title. Still, they became synonymous with postseason excellence and toughness. Despite decades of coming close, the Vikings have yet to win a Super Bowl, but they've remained one of the most consistently competitive teams in the NFL. Atlanta Falcons, founded 1966. The Atlanta Falcons were born out of a bidding war between 2 leagues and became the NFL's first team in the Deep South. In the mid-1960s, the NFL and the AFL were aggressively expanding, racing to plant their flags in untapped markets. Atlanta, one of the fastest-growing cities in the country, became a prime target. Businessman Rankin Smith, an executive with the Life Insurance Company of Georgia, originally planned to purchase an AFL franchise, but the NFL didn't want to lose ground in a city that had just opened the brand new Atlanta Fulton County Stadium, so they stepped in fast. NFL Commissioner Pete Rozelle offered Smith an expansion franchise, and to sweeten the deal, gave him exclusive NFL rights to the entire Southeast. Smith accepted, and in 1965, the Atlanta Falcons were officially awarded. The name Falcons was chosen through a fan contest. The winner, a local school teacher, said the Falcon was proud and dignified, with great courage and fight. That spirit would define the team's identity, even through decades of growing pains. Atlanta's early years were tough. The team didn't record a winning season until 1971, and only made the playoffs once in its first 12 years. In 1998, led by quarterback Chris Chandler, running back Jamal Anderson, and the legendary Dirty Bird celebration, the Falcons shocked the league by going 14-2 and reaching Super Bowl 33. Though they lost to Denver, it marked a turning point. In the 2000s and 2010s, with stars like Michael Vick, Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, and Roddy White, the Falcons became regular contenders. They reached Super Bowl 51 in 2016, only to suffer one of the most infamous collapses in sports history. Miami Dolphins, founded 1966. They were founded by lawyer and politician Joe Robbie and entertainer Danny Thomas, who were awarded an AFL expansion team set to begin play in 1966. At the time, Miami was known more for beaches than football, and many doubted whether a pro team could succeed in a city with no tradition of cold weather gridiron grit. But the Dolphins didn't just survive, they built a legacy. In their early years, the Dolphins struggled. They wore bright aqua and orange, played in the Orange Bowl, and lost a lot of games. But things changed quickly after the AFL-NFL merger, especially with the hiring of head coach Don Shula in 1970. Shula had already made a name for himself with the Baltimore Colts, and his arrival instantly transformed the Dolphins. He emphasized discipline, fundamentals, and physicality. The turnaround was almost immediate. By 1971, the Dolphins reached their first Super Bowl. By 1972, they made history. That year, Miami won a perfect 14-0 in the regular season, then won all 3 of their playoff games, including Super Bowl VII, to become the only team in NFL history to finish a season undefeated. The 1972 Dolphins went 17-0, a feat that has never been matched. They followed it with another Super Bowl win in 1973. Throughout the 1980s and 90s, the Dolphins remained a contender, thanks largely to the brilliance of quarterback Dan Marino. Drafted in 1983, Marino shattered passing records with his quick release and cannon arm. Though he never won a Super Bowl, he helped turn the Dolphins into a glamorous, must-watch franchise. New Orleans Saints, founded 1967. The New Orleans Saints were born on a day that felt almost scripted. November 1st, 1966, All Saints' Day. It was a poetic coincidence that helped inspire the team's name, linking it forever with the city's deep Catholic roots, jazz heritage, and cultural flair. New Orleans had been lobbying for a professional football team for years. The city already had a rich sporting tradition and a population passionate about college football. When the NFL and AFL announced their merger in the mid-1960s, Congress insisted on expanding the league to new markets. That pressure helped fast-track New Orleans into the NFL. The franchise was awarded to businessman John W. Mecom Jr., and the team was officially introduced in 1967. Their black and gold colors symbolize the region's ties to oil, black gold, and wealth, while their fleur-de-lis logo drew directly from French heritage and the city's European influence. But while the Saints' branding was iconic from the start, their play on the field was anything but. New Orleans became known as the lovable losers of the league. In fact, it took 20 seasons before the Saints had their first winning record, not until 1987. The team's early years were marked by heartbreak, bizarre moments, and devoted fans who showed up week after week, even when many jokingly wore paper bags over their heads, calling themselves the Aints. But the true transformation came in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina in 2005. The Superdome was severely damaged, and the franchise was temporarily relocated. Many questioned whether the Saints would ever return. Then came 2006. New head coach Sean Payton, quarterback Drew Brees, and a rejuvenated city rallied around each other. The Saints returned to New Orleans that season and made the NFC Championship, just 1 year after devastation. 3 years later, in 2009, they completed the dream, winning Super Bowl 44 and delivering the city its first championship. Cincinnati Bengals, founded 1968. The Cincinnati Bengals were founded as part of a strategic master plan, one created by Paul Brown, one of the most legendary figures in football history. By the late 1960s, Paul Brown had already done it all. He had founded and coached the Cleveland Browns, revolutionized the game with film study, playbooks, and organized coaching staffs, and won multiple championships. But after being controversially fired by the Browns in 1963, he wasn't done with football. He was just getting started, again. When the AFL announced its final expansion team before the merger with the NFL, Browns saw an opening. A new franchise was awarded to Cincinnati in 1967, set to begin play in 1968, and Paul Brown was placed in charge as both part owner and head coach. The name Bengals was chosen as a tribute to a previous pro team from the city in the 1930s, but it also gave the new franchise a strong, fierce identity. The Bengals began play in the American Football League in 1968 and transitioned to the NFL with the 1970 merger. Despite being a new team, they were competitive quickly. Brown's experience and eye for talent gave Cincinnati a massive advantage. In 1970, their first year in the NFL, the Bengals won their division and made the playoffs. A decade later, they became one of the most exciting teams in football under head coach Forrest Gregg and quarterback Ken Anderson, reaching Super Bowl 16 in the 1981 season. Though they lost to Joe Montana's 49ers, the Bengals were now a serious contender. The next few decades brought inconsistency and disappointment, a stretch known painfully by fans as the Bungles era. But everything changed with the arrival of Joe Burrow in 2020. With Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and a rebuilt defense, the Bengals made a stunning Super Bowl run in the 2021 season, falling just short against the Rams, but proving Cincinnati was back among the NFL's elite. Seattle Seahawks, founded 1976. In the 1970s, the NFL was expanding its footprint, and Seattle, a booming port city with no pro football team, emerged as a top target. The league awarded an expansion franchise to a group of Seattle businessmen led by Lloyd W. Nordstrom, the department store heir, in 1974. The team would begin play in 1976, along with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The name Seahawks was chosen through a public contest, Out of over 20,000 submissions, Seahawks was selected for its regional relevance and aggressive tone. The name perfectly fit the Pacific Northwest's rugged coastal identity. The Seahawks played their first season at the Kingdom, a concrete dome that echoed with noise and quickly earned a reputation as one of the loudest stadiums in football. The team struggled early on, but by the early 1980s, they were turning heads with young talent and a passionate fan base that would soon become legendary. Seattle's early stars included wide receiver Steve Largent, who would go on to become one of the greatest pass catchers in NFL history. Under head coach Chuck Knox, the Seahawks reached their first AFC championship game in 1983, led by a tough defense and bruising running backs like Kurt Warner. After bouncing between ups and downs for decades, and even switching conferences from the AFC to the NFC in 2002 due to realignment, the franchise's true rise came under head coach Pete Carroll. By the early 2010s, the Seahawks had built one of the NFL's most dominant defenses, nicknamed the Legion of Boom. With stars like Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas, and Bobby Wagner, paired with the electric, undersized quarterback Russell Wilson and powerhouse running back Marshawn Lynch, the Seahawks became an unstoppable force. In 2013, they reached the pinnacle, dominating the Denver Broncos in Super Bowl 48 to win their first championship in franchise history. They returned the next year, but fell in heartbreaking fashion to the Patriots after throwing the ball on the 1-yard line instead of giving it to Lynch, a decision still debated today. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, founded 1976. Awarded as part of the same 1976 expansion that birthed the Seattle Seahawks, the Buccaneers became the first NFL franchise based in Florida. The team was founded by wealthy businessman Hugh Culverhouse, who saw opportunity in the rapidly growing Tampa Bay area, a region passionate about football, but with no pro team to support. The Bucs' name was inspired by Florida's pirate history, particularly the legend surrounding the pirate Jose Gaspar, who was said to have prowled the Gulf Coast. The team's original mascot, Buccaneer Bruce, and their creamsicle orange uniforms quickly became iconic, and, at times, infamous. Their early seasons were brutal. The Buccaneers lost their first 26 games, setting an NFL record for futility. First head coach John McKay, known for his dry wit, once responded to a question about his team's execution by saying, "I'm in favor of it." But things turned around faster than expected. By 1979, just 3 seasons after their first win, the Buccaneers made the NFC Championship game, led by a ferocious defense starring Leroy Selman and a solid run game behind Ricky Bell. Tampa had gone from laughingstock to contender. Unfortunately, success didn't last. The 1980s and early 1990s were filled with instability, poor drafts, and endless coaching changes. The team became synonymous with losing, until everything changed in the late 90s. Under head coach Tony Dungy, the Buccaneers built one of the NFL's most feared defenses. With stars like Warren Sapp, Derek Brooks, John Lynch, and Rondé Barber, they laid the foundation for a winning culture. But it was John Gruden, hired in 2002, who brought it all together. In Super Bowl 37, the Buccaneers demolished the Oakland Raiders with a legendary defensive performance, claiming their first championship. Tampa had finally reached the mountaintop with defense, swagger, and redemption. Fast forward to 2020, and history repeated itself in even grander fashion. The Bucs signed Tom Brady, assembled a veteran-heavy roster, and won Super Bowl 55 in their own stadium, the first team in NFL history to win a Super Bowl at home. Carolina Panthers, founded 1995. Awarded in 1993 and beginning play in 1995, the Panthers were the result of businessman Jerry Richardson's decade-long campaign to bring professional football to the Carolinas. Richardson, a former NFL player turned fast food magnate, pitched the NFL a vision of a regional franchise, one that would unite North and South Carolina under a single team. Charlotte, North Carolina, was chosen as the home base. It was a city on the rise, with growing corporate power and sports potential. The team was initially based at Clemson University's Memorial Stadium, while their new home, Bank of America Stadium, was being built in downtown Charlotte. From the beginning, the Panthers did something unheard of for an expansion team. They won. Under head coach Dom Capers, Carolina finished their second season in 1996 with a 12-4 record, winning the NFC West and advancing all the way to the NFC Championship game. It was the fastest rise to prominence in NFL history at the time, and it instantly put the Panthers on the map. The early stars included linebacker Sam Mills, who coined the team's enduring slogan, "Keep Pounding," a mantra that still echoes through the stadium every Sunday. In 2003, they reached Super Bowl 38, narrowly losing to the New England Patriots in one of the most competitive Super Bowls ever played. The next decade brought another defining era, the Cam Newton years. Drafted first overall in 2011, Newton electrified the league with his size, speed, and charisma. In 2015, they went 15-1, steamrolling their way to Super Bowl 50. Newton won NFL MVP, and Carolina became the face of the league for a season. But once again, the story ended in Super Bowl heartbreak, this time to the Denver Broncos. Jacksonville Jaguars, founded 1995. The Jacksonville Jaguars were one of the biggest surprises in NFL expansion history, a small market team that beat out bigger cities and quickly became competitive on the field. In the early 1990s, the NFL was looking to expand, and cities like St. Louis, Baltimore, and Memphis were considered frontrunners. But in a major upset, Jacksonville, Florida, a mid-sized city with no major professional sports team, was awarded a franchise in 1993, set to begin play in 1995 alongside the Carolina Panthers. The team was founded by Wayne Weaver, a businessman from the shoe industry, and he pushed hard to convince the league that Jacksonville could support an NFL team. His pitch worked, and when the announcement was made, many around the league were stunned. The Jaguars debuted in 1995 under head coach Tom Coughlin, who had total control of football operations. Expectations were modest. Most expansion teams take years to build, but Jacksonville broke the mold. By 1996, in just their second season, the Jaguars shocked the league by going 9-7 and making the playoffs. Even more shocking, they upset the Buffalo Bills and Denver Broncos on the road to reach the AFC Championship game. It was one of the most improbable playoff runs ever for such a young team. But after that early burst of success, the 2000s were more difficult. The team struggled with roster turnover, coaching changes, and declining attendance. Then came a resurgence in 2017, led by a fearsome defense nicknamed Saxonville. Featuring Jalen Ramsey and Calais Campbell, the Jaguars made a run all the way to the AFC Championship game, nearly taking down the Patriots in Foxborough. Today, with Trevor Lawrence at quarterback and Doug Peterson as head coach, Jacksonville is once again building something special. Baltimore Ravens, founded 1996. The Baltimore Ravens weren't born like most NFL franchises. They were ripped from the heart of another city, the result of one of the most controversial moves in league history. In the mid-1990s, Baltimore had been without an NFL team for over a decade, ever since the Colts packed up and left for Indianapolis in the middle of the night in 1984. The city had tried everything to get a team back, including failed bids for expansion. But their second chance came not through the league, but through relocation. In 1996, Cleveland Browns owner Art Modell shocked the football world by announcing he would move the Browns to Baltimore. The backlash was instant. Cleveland fans were furious, the NFL was under pressure, and lawsuits flew from every direction. The compromise? Cleveland would get to keep the Browns' name, colors, and history. Modell would move the players, coaches, and front office to Baltimore, but they would become an entirely new franchise, the Baltimore Ravens. The name Ravens was inspired by Edgar Allan Poe, the famous poet who lived and died in Baltimore, and whose iconic poem, The Raven, became a symbol of the city's literary legacy. From the start, the Ravens built their identity on defense. In 1996, they drafted Jonathan Ogden, a Hall of Fame left tackle, and Ray Lewis, a linebacker who would become the heart and soul of the franchise. Over the next few years, they added more defensive legends like Ed Reed and Terrell Suggs, crafting one of the greatest units the game has ever seen. By 2000, that defense reached historic levels. The Ravens allowed just 165 points in the entire regular season, the fewest ever in a 16-game season, and rode that dominance to a blowout win in Super Bowl 35, crushing the New York Giants. They would win another Super Bowl in 2012 in the final season of Ray Lewis's legendary career. This time, they were led by quarterback Joe Flacco, who put together a flawless playoff run. In recent years, Baltimore has continued to innovate. In 2018, they drafted quarterback Lamar Jackson, whose electrifying speed and unique play style earned him NFL MVP. Once again, the Ravens had a star and a new era. Houston Texans, founded 2002. The Houston Texans are the youngest franchise in the NFL, but their creation filled a void left by heartbreak. For decades, Houston was home to the Oilers, a proud AFL original team known for stars like Earl Campbell, Warren Moon, and one of the most passionate fan bases in football. But in 1997, after years of stadium issues and declining attendance, the Oilers moved to Tennessee, becoming the Titans. The city was stunned. Houston, a football-mad town, was suddenly without a team. That didn't last long. Enter Bob McNair, a billionaire businessman with a vision. Determined to bring football back to Houston, McNair led a successful bid for an expansion franchise, beating out cities like Los Angeles. The NFL officially awarded Houston a new team in 1999, set to begin play in 2002. The name Texans was chosen to reflect state pride, a tribute to the identity and culture of Texas itself. The team's bull logo, star emblem, and red, white, and blue color scheme all emphasized that this was more than just a football team. It was a Texas brand. The Texans played their first game on September 8, 2002, and made an immediate statement, upsetting the Dallas Cowboys in their franchise debut. Early years were rocky. The team struggled to find stability and suffered through multiple losing seasons. But the pieces started to come together in the late 2000s. The Texans drafted Andre Johnson, a dominant wide receiver, and later found their franchise pass rusher in J.J. Watt, who would go on to win 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards. Under head coach Gary Kubiak and later Bill O'Brien, Houston became a playoff regular in the 2010s. With Watt anchoring the defense and stars like Arian Foster and DeAndre Hopkins on offense, the Texans built a strong identity. In 2017, they drafted quarterback Deshaun Watson, who added explosive playmaking to their offense and helped lead multiple playoff runs. But turmoil followed. A series of off-field controversies, front office instability, and years of roster mismanagement set the team back. Now, with C.J. Stroud at quarterback and DeMeco Ryans as head coach, the Texans are entering a new era. Stroud's breakout rookie season and the team's rapid turnaround have reignited hope in Houston, proving that even the NFL's youngest team can build something special, fast. If you enjoyed this, I'm going to be posting a lot here, so it would mean a lot if you subscribed. Thanks for watching.